Okay, Rabotai, we're holding this week, Baruch Hashem, Chag Pesach has come, and it also has passed us. And I'm sure that all of us grew and learned as individuals and as families as we went through the holiday of Pesach. Baruch Hashem, right after Pesach, we have the Shabbos. Whoever was able to make the special key challah last week, when the big segulot is brought down. And this week we're holding in Parshat Tazria-Metzora. Parshat Tazria-Metzora, a person has to have a deeper understanding of Tazria-Metzora. Obviously, Parshat Tazria-Metzora predominantly talks about someone who gets tzarat, someone who becomes a spiritual leper. And we say that because obviously it's not leprosy that's just regular leprosy. Because if someone was really a leper, they would have to be separated from the whole community. Now, a Metzora is isolated, but we're told that if the Metzora, if it was his wedding, if it was his chatuna, you don't separate him at that time. You leave him, and then afterwards, if it's still there, then the Kohen separates it. Because halacha is, even though a person has these white spots, these white hairs, or whatever it is, as long as the Kohen doesn't say the words that he is tameh, he's not tameh. So we have to understand that. But before we get to that point, the Torah, whenever it places parashiot in the Torah, it's never on random. The parasha doesn't just randomly put one parasha here or one parasha there. It's all put in sequence and for a reason. At the end of last week's parasha, Parashat Shemini, we discussed the status of animals, those that are kosher and those that are not. What are the simanim of kosher animals? What are the simanim of kosher fish? Which species of kosher birds? And in this week's parasha, in both parashot of Tazria-Metzora, we deal with tzarat. And what is the connection? There's an obvious connection. The Gemara tells us that for 7 different sins, a person can get tzarat. And the most common of those sins is the sin of lashon hara, the sin of speaking slander, of speaking lashon hara. There was a Hasidic Rebbe, and he once told his Talmidim, go and travel. Go on a trip. Those Hasidim, a group of Hasidim, go and take a trip. Go travel. Hasidim said, where to? Where should we go? And he said, travel. So the Rebbe said to travel, you travel. So they got all together, a group of Hasidim, and they set out along the road. As they were traveling through the night and needed a place to stay, so they stopped at a Jewish inn. And they wanted to eat something. So, being religious Jews, you don't just eat anything anywhere. You have to ascertain that the food that you're eating is legit, it's kosher. So there was the hostess, the innkeeper, a Jewish woman, and they started asking her, and where you get the meat from, who's the shaykhet, and who checks the greens, and all the questions that regular people ask who want to make sure they're eating kosher. And she answers them. She says the meat's from this and the shaykhet. We shechted it on this day. This is what it was. And the greens is checked by this mashgiach, and everything seems to be on the up and up, and the Hasidim start to eat. So the Hasidim get together, and they're talking, waiting for the food to come, and they're having some conversation. And they start talking about one thing leads to another thing, until they started talking about people. Now the innkeeper went into the kitchen to prepare the food. The food is ready, and she's coming to serve it on the table. She comes to the table, and she hears them talking about people. So she doesn't just go ahead and give musar and start telling them what you're doing is wrong. And she says, such a strange world. There are some people who are so careful about what goes into their mouths, yet at the same time are so carefree about what comes out of their mouth. The Hasidim heard this musar, and they heard this lesson, and they knew that this is what their Rebbe sent them to hear. What an amazing lesson. It's not enough to just worry about what comes into me. What am I eating? Is that kosher? But every aspect of a Jew and everything he does has to be made sure that it's kosher. What comes out of our mouths, what we speak, we must make sure that what we're saying is not forbidden speech. Hashem gave us the ability to speak. It's the one and only feature that really distinguishes us to be able to talk, and to be able to talk in abstract. That distinguishes us from the rest of the creatures of the world. So to be able to take that ability and abuse it is worse than any other Avirah, because that's the one thing that makes us more special than anything else. And so that's why these two parashot are always, as Torah sets it up this way, talking about kosher and talking about Lashon Hara. That tells us a two-way street. You got to make sure what's coming in and what's coming out of you is kosher at all times. Now our question that we started with was, the Metzorah speaks Lashon Hara, and he gets blemishes, these spots and white hairs, and we have to isolate him. That's the halakha. You have to send him outside. But we mentioned that if he's a hatan or for whatever other reason, until the kohen actually says it, doesn't become a Metzorah. That person can stay in the city with everyone else, doesn't have to go isolate himself. So obviously, it's not that type of disease that's contagious, because like we know, it's a spiritual tzarat. But yet, we do isolate him when the kohen does say that he's tameh. Now, if the sin is because of Lashon Hara is being a sin of social, not being able to socially get along with others, why are you sending him outside and isolating him once the kohen says tameh? Keep him amongst people, let him wear a big sign that says he's tameh, and everybody come next to him and tell him, why'd you do that? Give him musar and beat him up for it. Why are we sending him out the city? He's not contagious. We already know that. So what's the point? So Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky, he shared a beautiful story that really explains this. There was a man who was traveling from New York to Los Angeles. And he was very picky about where he sat on the plane. And so when he purchased his ticket, he requested that he be seated at the window. And when he came to the gate to board, he told them, please, before they gave him the boarding pass, he said, please make sure I have a window seat. And when they gave him his boarding pass, lo and behold, they gave him an aisle seat instead. And during the entire trip, he was uncomfortable. He was fidgeting back and forth. Why they gave me an aisle seat? Why they gave me an aisle seat? I can't believe it. I requested it. I told him I especially wanted it. And so as soon as he arrived in Los Angeles, he goes to the customer relations department and he starts to scream and yell. I says, I can't believe it. I requested it. I said, window seat. I made everything special for it. How could you give me an aisle seat? So the agent said, listen, I'm sorry that you got an aisle seat, but let me ask you, did you ask the person sitting at the window to maybe switch with you? Was that something that you tried? So the man who was having this whole fit says, I couldn't. He says, why not? He says, because there was nobody sitting in that window seat. There was nobody sitting in the window seat, so I couldn't ask anybody to switch with me. You see the tipshus? He wanted the window seat. Nobody was sitting there, so he didn't switch because nobody was there to ask. You see, the same thing is with tzaraat. A person who speaks lashon hara, a person who speaks forbidden speech, always finds an excuse why this speech is permissible. Because of this one, if I don't say it, he's not going to go. Always comes up with some idea. But you know what we say? Go isolate yourself. You're right, you're not contagious. This leprosy is not contagious. And you don't have to go right now. The Kohen can send you a little bit later. But in order for that person to get to the root of his sin and to figure out what he's doing wrong, he has to sit by himself to understand it's me. You know, a person doesn't just speak lashon hara. In order to speak lashon hara, Chachamim tell us, our Pam teaches as well, that a person's eyes is what really makes him speak lashon hara. Because if a person has eyes that are good, he only sees good. He doesn't have anything bad to speak about. But if, Chas v'shalom, someone has eyes that no matter what he looks at, he always finds a problem with, always a complaint, always something, so of course he can lashon hara to speak about, because that's all he sees. Right? The word nega tzaraat, affliction of tzaraat, nun gimel ayin, nega. It's the same letters of the word oneg. Oneg means to have oneg Shabbat, to enjoy Shabbat, because it depends how you look at it. If you look at anything in the world the right way, it's going to be oneg, be delightful, beautiful. If a person looks at it the wrong way, it becomes a nega. The same thing. Two people can see. One person sees a cup half full. Other person sees a cup half empty. Why? It depends how that person wants to view it. That is, in essence, one of the important lessons to take out from tzaraat. I want to move on to another very, very important yesod that one has to learn from this week's parasha. So in this week's Parshat Tazria, we start off that if a woman gives birth to a boy, we know that on the 8th day, we have a Brit Milah. There was a man, a Roman general, by the name of Turnus Rufus. And this Roman general met with Rabbi Akiva. And he told Rabbi Akiva, he had a bunch of questions for Rabbi Akiva. One of his questions that he asked Rabbi Akiva was, why do Jews give a Brit Milah? You know, you say your God is perfect. Hashem is perfect. So if Hashem is perfect, then the boy that's born, created by God, is perfect. Why are you making a Brit Milah? There's nothing. Why you have to fix what Hashem gave you? It's perfect already. Why making a Brit Milah? That was his question. So Rabbi Akiva tells him, Why did Hashem make in the umbilical cord, the cord that goes from the mother to the baby to feed the baby when it's in the mother's stomach? Why did Hashem make that? If anyway, it's going to fall off. Why is that there? It has to be cut. And when the baby is born, you have to cut it off. So why, if everything's perfect, why you have to cut it? It's the same thing. You're cutting this, you're cutting that. And then he said more. Every word of Hashem is refined, and Hashem wants the Jews to do mitzvot. So the Roman general says, then why does Hashem make poor people? Hashem is so perfect and so kind and so nice. Why did he make poor people in the world? So Rabbi Akiva answers that we, the rich people, should be saved. That we, the rich people, should be saved by giving tzedakah to the poor people. And that's the Gemara. And that's the Midrash. The Midrash and Gemara, that's what they say, the story that happened. We have to really understand, what was Rabbi Akiva answering? Is it really fair that poor people should be poor people, so rich people should be able to give them tzedakah, so that the rich people could be saved? I mean, that's a double hit on the poor people. It's good that you're poor, so I can help you out, and by helping you out, I get saved. So meanwhile, you have to be poor in order for me to help you out, so I should get saved. Not right. So what did Rabbi Akiva mean by this? So I saw this a couple of years ago, and it's an amazing concept and something that we have to really remember and apply to our lives. Rav Yaakov Gelinsky, the Hasidic Bracha, explained this in a phenomenal way. The Gemara in the end of Masechet Makot tells us that Rabbi Akiva was walking with other Chachamim, and they were walking in Israel, and they heard the noise. They heard noise coming from Rome. The streets, the metropolis of Rome, which was 72 miles away from where they were able to hear the buzzing of the city of Rome. And the Chachamim started to cry. And Rabbi Akiva started to laugh. So the Chachamim said to Rabbi Akiva, what's so funny? Why are you laughing? We're crying here that the Romans are enjoying their time, and we, the Jewish people, are sitting in exile, and you are laughing? So Rabbi Akiva says, that's exactly why I'm laughing. You see, if the Romans who do averot and do all sorts of bad things, and who exiled us and burnt down our temple, are being treated this way, and they have the ability to live peacefully, then I'm more certain that we too, the Jewish people who follow Hashem's ways, will also be able to one day live in peace and tranquility. They walked a little further, and they end up in Yerushalayim, and they see from the Temple Mount, where the Beit HaMikdash used to stand, that a fox comes out where the Kodesh Kedashim was. The Chachamim see that and they start to cry. A fox in the Kodesh Kedashim. The Kodesh Kedashim no one could go into. The Kohen goes once a year. If anyone has Shalom walked in there, they died immediately. And now foxes are in the place where the Kodesh Kedashim used to be. Chachamim start to cry. And again, Rabbi Akiva is laughing. Chachamim say, what's so funny here? How could you laugh here? The Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. Foxes are in the place where the Kodesh Kodashim used to be. And he says, that's exactly why I'm laughing. You see, the Navi told us that there will be a destruction, and after the destruction, there will be the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. But now that I see the destruction, I can believe for certain that there will be a rebuilding. The fact that there is a destruction allows me to believe that Hashem would rebuild all this. The Chachamim told Rabbi Akiva, you have comforted us. You have comforted us. What's the difference? The Chachamim were walking and they saw what was here and now. They saw right now that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the Jews were living in exile. But when Rabbi Akiva walked, when Rabbi Akiva saw something, he didn't just see now. He saw the potential. He saw what's going to be. He saw what could be. He saw what will be. And all this was based on an observation that Rabbi Akiva saw, that everybody knows. Rabbi Akiva saw a stone and had a hole in it. And he saw that the water was dripping day after day after day and made this hole. And Rabbi Akiva thought and said, how did this happen? The frequent banging of this water made the hole. Meaning, don't look at one drop of water, but look instead what all those drops can do. And Rabbi Akiva started to live his life that way. He went with his son to preschool to learn Aleph Bet. He didn't say, what am I going to get from this? Because he already saw that if he stays in it, he's going to end up reaching where he needs to get. Kol tchilot kashot. All beginnings are hard. All of them. All beginnings are hard. Person wants to start learning Torah. Person wants to start going to shul. Person wants to start doing something, mitzvah, whatever it is, whatever you want to start doing. In the beginning, it's always going to be hard. Because all beginnings are hard. But if a person has Rabbi Akiva's mindset is, don't look at right now. You don't just look now. You already should be having your eye in the future. You should already be seeing that if I continue this, that if I continue learning Torah, if I continue doing what's supposed to be done, I'm going to end up on the other side where I'm supposed to be. A person has to have this outlook. Rabbi Akiva was telling us, don't just look right now. You know, if a person takes a futuristic outlook, because we know that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us in the Nevi'im is going to come true. So you just have to believe it's coming true and already believe it and already know that it's happened. It's called a prophetic present, which means basically, even though it's happening in the future, it's considered to happen now because it's prophetic. It's benevu'ah. And if it's benevu'ah, then it's for surely going to come true. This was what Rabbi Akiva saw. This was how Rabbi Akiva could go and spend and learn Torah. And this is how Rabbi Akiva, he's brought to his death. The Romans are taking iron combs and they're taking his skin. Imagine an iron comb. That means instead of the hairbrush you have, it's full with iron. It's sharp. And they're taking it on his skin, literally peeling off his skin and everything that's in him. And Rabbi Akiva, he's not crying. The Romans are unbelievable. This same Tunis Rufus says, what, you don't feel pain? Were you a magician? And Rabbi Akiva says, I'm not a magician. But you know what? I know that when a person suffers, suffering brings kapara, suffering brings atonement. And I know if I die, Al Kiddush Hashem, I'm going to go to Gan Eden, no problem. So, to me, I'm already in Gan Eden. To me, all this suffering is already giving me kapara. And if that's the case, I have nothing to be sad about. I have nothing to cry about. Because in my mind, I'm already in the future. This is Rabbi Akiva. This is an amazing way of looking at life. Is to look already to know what the future will bring. Suffering is terrible, and nobody wants suffering. But we have to remember that suffering brings with it much benefit to the person. Nobody wants it. The Gemara gives you stories where people Chachamim were suffering, and they said, take it away from me, because nobody wants to suffer. But listen to this story. The Gemara tells us that when Eliezer fell ill, his students came to visit him. And Rabbi Eliezer told them that there's anger in the world. And that's why he was afflicted with this serious illness. Every Talmid started to cry. All the Talmidim started to cry. What did Rabbi Akiva do? Again, Rabbi Akiva started to laugh. What are you laughing for? Our rabbi is in pain. He's a Sefer Torah. He's an Ish Kadosh. And you're laughing? Rabbi Akiva said, you know, our rabbi, everything by him is perfect. His wine stays good all the time. His bread is always good. His house is perfect. His honey never spoils. And I was thinking to myself that perhaps my rabbi, all his reward is in this world. Chas shalom, he has no reward in the next world. But now that I see his suffering, I know that he'll have reward in the next world as well. This was Rabbi Akiva. Everyone was comparing Rabbi Eliezer to something special, like the rain, like this, like that. And Rabbi Akiva just said, suffering is precious. Because Rabbi Akiva, to him, suffering at the present wasn't suffering. Because it's what comes in the future, the schar that comes with it, is what's most important. That's what Rabbi Akiva answered Tunas Rufus when he said about the Brit Milah. You're asking about Brit Milah. You're asking why the poor person? Because the poor person, the rich people can help him, and the rich people will then be saved. What about the poor person? Rabbi Akiva said the poor person, he's so lucky. He has the suffering of being poor. You know how much schar that's going to reach him? Rav Pam once said a story. He said a neshama comes to Shemayim after 120. And they take this neshama and they tell this person, here's your mitzvot on one side, and here's your averot on the other side. And his averot are so much compared to his mitzvot. Even mitzvot he thought he did ended up on the averah side. And so the man starts to cry. And all of a sudden, a big bag comes. Big malachim come. And they go on the mitzvah side. And the man says, what's all these mitzvot? They said, this is your suffering. This is all the pain you had while you were alive. The scales go, and the averot is a little more than the pain, and the suffering, and the mitzvot. So he starts to cry. He says, Hashem, I don't have any other suffering. Just a little bit more. Why didn't you give me a little more pain, a little more suffering, a little more embarrassment, a little bit more, so I would not have this problem. I wouldn't have more averot. I wouldn't have to go to Gehenna. That's the way that Rabbi Akiva looked at life. Rav Yaakov Belinsky shares a story about there was a certain Rav in a city who had a daughter. She was a marriageable age, and he came to the yeshiva in Radin, and he was looking for the top boy. He went to the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim had a certain boy in mind. So he sent this boy to go see the girl's father, the Rav, and to go to that community, to see the rabbi, to see the house, to see the girl. So this boy ends up in this little village. Everything there is run down and broken. All the houses look like it's falling apart. The whole city is terrible. He came from a big city, and now he's in this small village. You can't believe it. He gets to the rabbi's house, and the rabbi's house is worse than all the other houses. And he walks inside, the whole house is the guy for a table is using a barrel with a piece of wood on top of it. And he can't believe it. He sees the girl is dressed in rags, in clothing that's not bekovedik, not nice clothing. So he speaks to the girl, he speaks to the rabbi. The rabbi is a very smart man. When he gets back to Radin, the Chafetz Chaim says, "No, how was it?" He says, "Rabbi, it's just the Chafetz Chaim. Listen, Rabbi, it's very, I went there, and the house was falling apart. They didn't have a table. They didn't even have chairs. He was using benches." The Chafetz Chaim said, "Wow, that's amazing stuff. What else did you see that was so good?" He says, "What, Rabbi? That's not good. They're poor." The Chafetz Chaim says, "You don't understand. That's the best. That's suffering. That what they have, little bit. That's going to give them Gan Eden. And you're worried about that?" It's a different perspective of life. It's a different way of looking at everything. To look with a futuristic look. I think that's one of the biggest yisodot that you can get out from this parasha. I want to end off, we only have about 7 more minutes. I want to end off with another very important lesson. At the end of Parshat Metzora, it talks about the zav, another certain type of tumah. And in the psukim there, it says if a person has zav dama yamim rabim, he has this tumah of zav for many days, he should be careful. It's important that a person make sure he removes the tumah from him and make sure he doesn't die with tumah. The Noam HaMitzvot, based on these psukim, learns a very important lesson. He says that it's important a person do tshuva right away. I've met a lot of people in my life that they say, listen, now don't bother me with minyan, now don't bother me with this stuff, learning, burning. When I'm going to get older, Batom, I'm going to go to shul. Batom, I'm going to go to the classes. When I'm older, now I'm young, now I'm vibrant, now I have energy to do other things. When I get older, I do tshuva. When I do older, I'll pray. The Noam HaMitzvot tells us, don't let that happen to you. Be careful to do tshuva now. You know why? Think about it this way for 1 minute. The Yetzer Hara works on a person to make him do avirot. Every day, the Yetzer Hara from morning till night is working on you to make you do avirot. Everyone, me, you, everybody who's alive has a Yetzer Hara who's making him do avirot. Now imagine how much investment the Yetzer Hara put into this. The Yetzer Hara put in so much investment. Now you think when you're 80 years old, after 80 years of investment of you making avirot, what? He's going to let you now to do tshuva and let all his investment go to waste? How much time and effort he put in you to make sin, and now he's going to let you all go away? And they say over a story, a true story that happened in Izmir, Turkey, with the great Chacham, the Harav Eliyahu Me'izmir, the Shevet Musar, that one day he was the chief rabbi of Izmir, and he gets a knock on the door. And the Jew tells him, there's a Jew standing there, and he says that the boss, the Don of the Jewish mafia, is dying. And this mafia boss is requesting that the chief rabbi come to him to do vidui. No one wants to meet the mafia boss, but the chief rabbi has a job to all Jews. So he dons his rabbinical garb and he goes to the mafia boss's house to do vidui with him. And the mafia boss starts the vidui. He says, I sinned, I this, I that. He starts saying where he killed people, how he stole people's money, what he did in his life. And all the other gangsters, all the other mafiasnik people in the room, also, they see their boss doing tshuva. They also start doing tshuva. And they also start saying everything. And then, all of a sudden, this Don, this mafia boss, he stops. And instead, he starts to curse out Hashem. He starts to say bad words about the rabbis, about Hashem, about the Torah. The chief rabbi doesn't believe it. Harav Eliyahu Me'izmir doesn't believe it. He says, what are you doing? We're doing vidui. We're changing you. We're fixing you. He says, I can't. He says, why not? He says, right now, standing in front of me is this huge angel. And he's got this huge sword in his hand. He's all full of fire. And he tells me if I say one more Hebrew word, he's going to kill me right now. And the rabbi says, this is the Yetzer Hara. He's not letting you do tshuva. Don't listen to him. And the man says, I can't. He's too powerful. And he ended up dying with cursing Hashem on his lips. Can you imagine? Even on his deathbed, he couldn't make a tshuva. Because the Yetzer Hara invested so much. He's not going to just get up and walk away on the last day and say, okay, now it's okay, do tshuva, go to Gan Eden. Doesn't work that way. At the end, he's going to put up a fierce battle to not let that person do tshuva. That's why, be careful right now. When a person does a sin, immediately it's time to make tshuva. Not to wait and not to say, when I get older, when I get smarter, when I have more time, I'll do the mitzvot, I'll do tshuva. Chas v'shalom. person has to do it now. Especially now, when a person has more time to reflect on himself and on his place and what he's doing. Nebuch, some people think that they're in quarantine, so it's time to binge watch, as they call it, to find stuff to watch all day, to keep themselves occupied. Nebuch, that's what they think the whole thing is about. I tell you right now, all Chachamim will tell you, that now that you have, if you're not working, if you're not an essential worker, and you're a quarantine, you don't have Siddurim regularly, now is the time to make them. Baruch Hashem, there's shiurim happening all over. There are so many Sfarim that a person can use. This is what the time is made for. So Rabotai, with these lessons of understanding that what goes into our mouth, what comes out of our mouth, both have to be made sure to make kosher. The lesson that our eyes have to see the correct things and be happy with what we see. Our eyes have to look past what's here, what's in the present, and look to the future and believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yeshuot, and they will come true. And to know that now is the time, and not to wait to some other time to work on ourselves and work on making tshuva. And with this, Rabbatai, I want to wish one and all a Shabbat Shalom, Rosh Chodesh Tov, and Be'ezrat Hashem, Ani Hashem Refaecha, right? Iyar. Hashem is the one that brings the refuah. There is nobody else. I think everybody knows this now. The whole world knows. There's no one that can bring a refuah. Rak HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So to this, I want to wish everybody Yeshuot, everyone who needs the refuah shlema, should see refuah shlema, to Rav Mordechai, Rafael Mordechai ben Tamar, he should see refuah shlema, and the shir should be Lili Nishman to all those who passed, and all those should be in Melitz Yosher for us, and we should see the Yeshuot, we should see the Geulah, Bekarov, Im Mashiach Tzidkenu, Imher B'Yameinu, Amen, Selah. Rosh Chodesh Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.